Hi, I'm Richard Blythe, Pro Vice Chancellor of Humanities at Curtin University, and I'm here with an old and dear friend of mine, Martin Bean, and we're going to have a rollicking conversation about AI and how it's playing out particularly across higher education. Martin has been travelling all over the world this year. If anyone follows him on LinkedIn, you'll see just how much travel he's done. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to share a few things with him and get his reflections on what he's seeing internationally and to discuss some of the plans that we have at Curtin with him. So Martin, now I remember you telling me a story about growing up loading mics in your dad's rock and roll recording studio in Melbourne. And from there you've gone on to become a global education leader, leading institutions like Microsoft in their education sector, open universities in England and RMIT, and now the Bean Centre, which is where you're doing consulting for just about everybody on the planet, and particularly looking at how institutions and leaders deal with the turbulence of change, the title of your book. So let's kick it off with just a few quick thoughts, high-level thoughts on how you see the links between those early days and where you're at now, and some of the key observations that you would make about what's happening in this space as you travel around.
Thanks, Richard, and it's really great to be here. And for those watching, welcome. It's good to be back with you. I've always admired Curtin, as you know, Richard, from my time at RMIT, sister universities as part of the ATN, and so it's terrific to be back. And you know, when I had this, you invited me to do this today, it really did put me in a bit of a reflective state to just look back, because my whole career has always been at the intersection of education and technology, whether it was from the technology vendor perspective in the early days with companies like Novell and Prometric, or more recently Microsoft, and then jumping ship with the Open University in the UK, which you know is Britain's largest university and was set up in the late 60s to really be a pioneer in using technology to allow people to participate in education that normally wouldn't participate. Back then, it was the breakthrough technology of the colour television, where the OU broadcast its lectures with the BBC into people's lounge rooms, where we trained more inebriated physicists than any other university on the planet, because it was the only thing on, auntie, when you got back from the pub. But what's very interesting for me is that if you look at every application of technology, Richard, all the way through, its great promise, its great upside is to offer greater access to as many people on the planet who are motivated to engage with tertiary or higher education in a more meaningful way. That all the research that we did at Microsoft and the Gates Foundation, and my life experience starting FutureLearn in the United Kingdom, I should say, one of the world's big MOOC platforms, was the great promise was also how could the technology unlock the humans to drive high quality learning experiences. Now, it can also do great harm if it's applied the wrong way, if we're not intentional, if we're not thoughtful, if we're not looking at what could go wrong as well as what could go right, or, which is what I'm seeing everywhere around the world, we get trapped in the tyranny of conventional wisdom. We're so stuck in the way that we've done things that when breakthrough technologies like generative AI come along, we simply see them as a threat and we go defensive, which is what I talk a lot about in Graham Winters and my book Toolkit for Turbulence, that we're pre-wired in the face of change and ambiguity to go defensive. So a lot of my work now with universities, with governments, with systems, with private sector technology companies is all about how do we thoughtfully and intentionally unlock the value of generative AI to drive access to higher quality experiences for the learner from a learning and teaching perspective. And I'm deliberately probably going to sort of anchor most of my remarks in learning and teaching today rather than research and innovation or community engagement, but I'm sure we'll stray there as well. So that's a little bit of a backdrop for you with some opening thoughts.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm already going to go off script, so I'm not going to even read the next question, because you touched on something there that I reflect on a bit, being in the state of Western Australia, which is apparently 4 times bigger than Texas and stretches from here to there, and there's so many remote places, and you referred to that ambition of open university being able to reach people, and and the BBC and what the BBC did.
Yeah.
And of course, in Australia, we've had the School of the
Yeah.
Airways School that has over 100 years of history in this place. So the idea of extending education to the remotest parts of our communities is there in our DNA.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so for me, that's an interesting thing to reflect on as we look at the capabilities that new technologies like AI will bring.
Yeah.
So it sort of sets us up nicely. And one thing I do wonder, you talked about the reactions to AI, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on what you're seeing. One way to look at AI is to say, let's look at everything that we currently do and work out how AI can do it that same way.
Yeah.
I'm wondering your thoughts on what you're seeing with AI and what you've seen with other parts of digital technologies as they've emerged. How much is it going to actually change the way that human beings learn and how we engage each other in that organic learning process? What sort of things are you noticing there?
Yeah, so each time we've had these shifts, major shifts in technology, it's always actually, from my perspective, been an opportunity to rethink what education is really about, which isn't just simply rote memorization of information to regurgitate it in a nonsensical exam that has no meaning or relevance in the application of knowledge, skills, behaviours in the real world. And yet our natural reaction every time one of these big shifts comes along is to try to put a policy around it, try to stop it, try to control it. And that doesn't last very long. It probably lasted 1 to 2 years with the browser, because I've seen this movie before. I remember when Netscape came out and it was like Armageddon in higher education, because everybody's like, oh my goodness, they'll be able to type into a search box and have access to all of this information and not have to go to the library and hunt through library cards to find a book on a shelf, blah, 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 blah. So for me, the great challenge for us is being able to not fear it or try to have it simply automate tasks that we do ourselves, but to actually liberate the humans to do the higher value tasks, teaching, instructional design that we need to actually equip the humans to do what we uniquely do best, at least for now, Richard. So if you think about the top 3 reasons why generative AI is being used by knowledge workers according to LinkedIn. Number 1, save time. Number 2, improve creativity. Number 3, improve focus. Those are 3 deeply human needs, particularly in a world where through the pace of change, today is the slowest day of the rest of your working life. And yet you're already tired, you're already a bit worn out from having to tackle challenge after challenge or change after change. And yet the inescapable reality is today is the slowest day of the rest of your working life. So back to your question, it's not just simply about what can we do to automate things we already do. It's about thinking intentionally about how do we partner with it? How do we use it as a partner for ourselves, for our teams, for our institutions, to get it to take care of the low value tasks that aren't a very good use of the human's time, not to save money, but to free the humans up to do the stuff that we are uniquely good at, and ironically is where all the value is for our students and ourselves in our ambition as educators.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's a nice way to look at it. So if we think to that scene of what it's like to be at the coalface right at the moment in that learning and teaching space, where there's a lot of change happening, and then we're talking about an overlay of AI, and then we have all the thought that we're going to have to put into, well, okay, we've got a generation in universities and we're going to need to bring them on a journey of how they become AI proficient. When I think about that, I think back, you may remember this, learning Pascal and BASIC
Yeah, sure do.
And I remember
I'm a DOS wizard. Just
Yeah.
nobody cares anymore.
And I remember at high school we were all told that we had to learn this
Yeah.
because if we didn't learn it,
Yeah.
we'd be left behind by the desktop computing
Yeah.
age. Then my kids learned how to make apps when they were in
Yeah.
about grade 2. They were
Yeah,
teaching them,
yeah.
they were making their own apps
Yeah.
because in order to survive in the app world, you'd have to be a maker of apps. And
Yeah.
I think there's currently billions of app users
Yeah.
in the world, and of those billions of app users, there's about a million people who actually build apps.
Yeah.
And of those, and something like a million apps a year uploaded into Google and Apple, only 100,000 or so actually have any life. So it's actually a very small set. Is that a good model for thinking about what will happen in AI? I guess what I'm asking is everybody going to become a producer of AI agents to run their life, or are we going to move into a working environment where that becomes a little bit more part of the platforms that we work on that are organised by expert AI builders? How would you? What would your advice be around that?
So the flip side of your very relevant observation about the number of apps versus the number of apps being used by people in a meaningful way, I think is a good way to think about generative AI. I think at the end of the day, the market will coalesce around a limited number of large language models, pieces of technology, user interfaces. There's a certain inevitability of consolidation with technology just because the investment is so high. But the flip side is, what percentage of human beings are using apps every day? And that is very, very high.
And it is billions.
And it is billions.
Yes.
So I think the way to think of AI is the way to future-proof our students and future-proof our staff and our communities and society is not to focus on the technology at all. It's to focus on equipping the individuals to be able to harness the technology in meaningful, ethical, and intelligent ways, Richard. And so, which means that we have to, as institutions, ensure that we have an AI literacy program for all of our students and all of our staff that is refreshed on a quarterly basis, that is built on the back of a well put together standard framework of AI literacy, and recognised because it's morphing every 12 weeks, that course and those sets of programs that I believe should be taught at every level in a university need to be refreshed and re-offered at least twice a year, and probably more likely to be 4 times a year. And I'm running into universities all around the world that are already doing it. They've already got AI literacy programs built on the back of frameworks fully deployed for all of their students and all of their staff, and they're stepping up to the responsibility that they've got for making sure that the human is literate about what AI is, the ethics of AI, the usage of AI, etc., etc. Then I think it's about recognizing that it's been this way well before generative AI, but it's really accelerated it, that it's the enduring human capabilities that we need to be teaching, we need to be assessing, we need to be credentialing, and we need to be able to put into digital form factors so that they're expressible, discoverable, and verifiable by the world of work. Because if you go in and look at what are the most in-demand skills, recent snapshot by LinkedIn in the United States, number 1 is AI literacy. Came out of nowhere 2 years ago. Wasn't even on the top 10 list 2 years ago. But almost every other skill in their top 10 list in the United States, they haven't published a global study recently, are all enduring human capabilities. Communication, group collaboration, critical thinking, project management, all of these things that are about the human skills. And yet, a lot of the universities that I work with around the world sort of assume that's going to happen. You can't find it very well signposted in their courses and their programs or the degrees, how they're teaching, assessing, credentialing, or giving the language to their students to be able to describe the experiences and the knowledge and the skills they've got as it relates to those human capabilities. So I guess long-winded answer to say, teaching the students the technology like we were with BASIC and Fortran and COBOL and all the things, sort of a waste of time now. developing the human capabilities of critical thinking, of problem solving, of creativity, those are the ones that are going to set people up for life. I kind of joke when I work with universities now that the social scientists are back, Richard. This is our time. We're coming back now, but that's the reality.
And of course, all of those capabilities shift as they touch these technologies too. I mean, the way that you think critically, the way that you organise things changes because you've got access to a whole different capability set. It's a bit like when we moved from the logarithmic tables to the calculator.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't. I can remember that predictions that would destroy us mathematically and we'd never be the same. It didn't do that. It just meant that we accessed that data in a slightly different way and engaged with the technologies in new ways.
I think though, was it Spider-Man, Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility? Yes. I think though we do have a real responsibility though this time. We didn't do it with social networking, Richard. We just looked at all the upside. We didn't look at the downside. I think it's really important that we pause this time and realise that if we don't develop the human capabilities around critical thinking and reasoning and triangulation of data points, given the magnitude of impact of generative AI, it could be very challenging for our communities. So as I'm speaking to a university audience, when I talk about AI literacy, I think it's also important that we learn from what happened with social media and we step up to our responsibility for people not to just simply stay in bubbles or accept, the responses that are coming back or be seduced into thinking that that is the only answer or that is the only way to think through a problem or a situation or an observation. And I do worry because it is so good at mimicking human language, human emotions, pleasing us and wanting to please us, that if universities don't step up to the imperative as part of AI literacy to actually make sure we are adding the value we're meant to be adding, then things could actually go pretty bad as well. Like you could very simplistically say that humans always took inputs in, analysed the inputs and added our human value to it, our critical thinking, our value add, and then we produced outputs. The way I'd like to think about it is the AI can speed us up on the inputs. The AI can speed us up on the outputs. It's up to us whether we spend that extra time to do our bit, which is the human bit in the middle. And so really helping particularly our undergraduate students, all of them, to think about not pushing it away, not saying it's evil, but how does it augment them and what do they need to do to step up from a critical thinking perspective to make sure that what they then do with it to produce the output is what they intended.
And that critical thinking and ethical space,
yeah.
Would you see that as being something that actually is relatively unique to a university setting? I mean, this is if that's the driver of how universities engage with AI. Does that give us a space that we can occupy that's a little different to how a Anthropic or something would be occupying this space? Not to critique them, but they just have a different agenda in terms of
absolutely. And not only can it give us that opportunity, we have to step up. This is going to sound really lofty, but I'm in the preferment stage of my career now, so I only work on things I prefer to work on. I do this work because I think free liberal democracies and vibrant communities of all types need universities. We need those voices of critique and reason and deep thinking in our systems to ensure that humans are equipped to be able to survive and thrive in life and work. And I, to my core, I believe that, and it chills me to see around the world right now how systems are trying to control universities, to try to dampen us, to stop us being voices of challenge and reason in our communities, to suppress us from being able to bring diverse thoughts into the process of reasoning and conclusions. And so, given the impact that generative AI is already having on our communities and societies, and it's right at the very beginning, we have to ensure that as universities we do our job, Richard, and our job this time is to make sure that every one of our members of staff and our students are equipped with the literacy that they need to ensure that we do it the right way. Because otherwise, to your point, history's not kind to humanity when the power coalesces in the hands of a very small number of people who can't be challenged. Right. So I think we're getting very sort of philosophical now, but I deeply believe universities and tertiary institutions have to step up in this moment of shift and accept the responsibility for doing it the right way. So any university that isn't deeply thinking about how to equip our students and staff to survive and thrive in a world where AI is out, it's never coming back, Pandora's box is never being closed, and therefore now is our time to step up. Or if they're stuck in a world of 2-year program development cycles or program refresh cycles, in either of those scenarios, they will fail their social responsibility to equip their students and staff to survive and thrive in life and work.
Yeah, that's a nice way to frame the social responsibility that universities have moving into this AI reality that we're, as you say, already deeply embedded in. And it does bring us to the question of the social licence of universities and the relationships that they have with governments. You referred to the, we're seeing some tendencies of wanting to control what universities do. It's an important relationship, isn't it, between a government, its public universities in particular. How do you, and with the Australian Universities Accord, there's a vision which is a vision for a whole nation, and there's some really fantastic ambitions in that to continue to expand higher education to a much broader cross-section of the population. And as we've touched on, it does seem that AI has many capabilities there that should enable us to do that better and better. How would you see those things playing together? Because you've spoken to me previously about the government's slight disillusion, let's say, with universities not stepping up to their social responsibility or their taking hold of their social licence. And maybe is there ways that universities could better understand what governments need to do in the higher education space and what their limitations are? And does AI give us a potential platform where we could engage far more productively with government to say, here's a whole of society way that we can uplift education across all domains without and to do that without being limited to the sort of resourcing models that have accompanied our previous ways of operating.
With that, well, look, a bit of a backdrop. In the work that I do around the world with universities, most universities that I wander up to have either a crisis of revenue, a crisis of relevance, or a crisis of both. And the relevance is how well are they meeting sort of that social imperative? How relevant to communities and societies are they and the graduates they're producing to the world that we live in now? And so I think generative AI across the board gives us a perfect opportunity. We'll look at it in the Australian context for now. Gives us a perfect opportunity to partner with government, state and federal to be able to ensure that we are equipping future generations with the skills, knowledge, capabilities and behaviours they need for life and work. And I deliberately say life and work because our responsibility is not just work, but I will remind the people watching this that well over 90% of the undergraduates who come to us with a motivation to get a job or get ahead. So I do not shy away from the need for universities to equip their students with the skills and capabilities they need for the world of work. What's on the mind of every government that I've ever worked with, no matter what their political persuasion? Jobs. Jobs equals votes, votes equals being elected equals power, power equals happy government people. So we have a fantastic opportunity to coalesce with the federal government around the skills agenda, particularly when those skills are changing so dramatically and so fast in the technical domain, to ensure that we've got not just the supply of 18 to 24-year-olds that are coming into the system, but Richard, we have to step up and partner with government to ensure we are relevant for lifelong learners as well. We have to be there with them to be able to skill and reskill our people from 16 to 75. Those universities that stay trapped disproportionately in 18 to 24 or 25 for their core catchment of students, they are already irrelevant to the world that we live in now. So there's, and then of course on the social side, the access side, take you back to 2012, the year of the MOOCs. It proved to us if you put programs out there that were intentional, well-produced, highly engaging, literally millions of students would flock to it without any credit, without any real certificates at the end of the day. Why? Because they had a hunger, knowledge and motivation to learn, and we could help them do that in a thoughtful, meaningful way. Now that was using internet-based technology. Imagine what we can do now, Richard. Imagine with generative AI, if we think about the reinvention of the MOOCs, maybe not necessarily all for free, but certainly to open up access to those people, to create an infinite number of safe on-ramps, an infinite number of safe off-ramps, so that we can contextualize who we are, more demand-side thinking than supply-side thinking, to lean in to our citizens of all ages, of all types, or all backgrounds. Because guess what? Within 5 years on their phone, they're all going to have a learning agent sitting right alongside them that is going to take care of most of the barriers that have traditionally prevented non-traditional learners from engaging. And how do I know that? What's the number one learning platform in the world? YouTube. What's the number one question that gets asked? How do I?
Yep.
Humans all over the world are using YouTube in all elements of their lives to learn, to achieve an outcome. You start powering that, which I'm already doing with generative AI through voice recognition on my phone linked to content of all types. It will be remarkable, but then that brings me back to critical thinking, because if I don't have the skills in critical thinking, then I'm a hostage, aren't I? I'm a hostage to whatever is being curated for me, and I lack the ability to challenge that and go roam elsewhere by constructing different prompts, different questions, or using different technology. So I think it has unbelievable promise for us to engage at a societal level as well as an education level. But I do worry, Richard, that that's going to require a lot of change on our part to remain relevant. And I could pretty well sort universities into those that are stuck and don't even realize that their level of relevance is dropping precipitously every month and every quarter, and those that have got an open mind to the fact that they are going to have to change the way they do things if they're going to stay relevant. And in this country, if you don't stay relevant, you don't have the revenue that you need to stay in business. So it's sort of a win-win.
And I'm with you on the YouTube, having used it to fix my bicycle on the
There you
weekend,
go.
Martin. It's exactly the question I asked. How do I do this? So that's I guess this is the existential question for universities at the moment, is maintaining that relevance and ensuring that we harness AI in the right ways to power learning across our whole institutions, and to do that in a way where we're actually recognising that, as you said, this means we're going to have to do things entirely differently. And for me, this is a big thing: is to not use the technology to continue to bed down our traditional ways of working, but how do we use the technologies to free us up to do things in entirely new ways would be a big question, I think.
So 3 thoughts for you on that. First is, most of the discussions that I have with universities around generative AI typically coalesce around learning and teaching and research and innovation. I think universities need to take a holistic approach across everything that we do: marketing, student services, finance, people and culture, everywhere. But the goal shouldn't be to cut cost. The goal should be, how can we get the generative AI to do all the low value tasks that it's really good at, to free up the humans and the resources to invest in those areas that are going to add greater value. That would be the first observation for you. The second observation is we need to do some radical thinking around assessment and the promise of generative AI to really be able to create different and alternative assessment types that are authentic, valid, and have meaning in the real world, in life and work. And why did I start with assessment? I started with assessment because if we actually have an open mind around assessment and how it is that we want to work with individuals to ensure that they have the knowledge, the skills, the behaviours, and the language to describe them that is relevant in life and work, then everything that comes before it in the learning and teaching will have to step up to ensure that the human is equipped to be able to demonstrate those things. The reason why we've feared it to date with assessment is because it's shown our vulnerabilities. It's shown just how outdated much of our assessment actually is because it still overly rewards the ability to do rote memory, memorization and regurgitation, or the ability to do things where there is no real application in the real world in life and work once you're through the assessment. So that'd be the second area, and I'm really working with universities as a provocation. Because if you walk into any learning and teaching group and say, my provocation is, what does your assessment need to look like to be relevant in the real world and work? And how do you authentically and genuinely ensure that all of your graduates have the skills, capabilities, knowledge, behaviours, etc., that they need to warrant you giving the award that you're giving them? It kicks off a whole bunch of other conversations. And the third would be intentionality. So instructional design shouldn't happen by accident. The reason why the Open University in the United Kingdom historically has been so successful is every piece of coursework is intentionally designed for an adult learner disproportionately studying at a distance with a multiple set of other responsibilities, and the content is deliberately, and the instructional design is deliberately scaffolded with that persona in mind. We need to be intentional around all of our learner personas to ensure that we are stepping up both with the physical environment as well as the digital environment as tools to create the best possible learning experiences for them to be successful. The generative AI opens up an incredible number of new ways of doing that, and it can save us the time we need in the transactional work to allow us to be able to invest the time to do just that. Whether we do it or not, that's on each of us as individual educators and the institutions and the strategies that they have.
And you've touched on a couple of things there, Martin, that could really shift what happens in universities. One of the big restrictions, as you'd know, is that as the number of students have increased proportionally across universities, it's harder and harder to have provided that personalised learning assistance role. And then the more we've diversified our student body, the more that's actually needed. And then we've put other mechanisms in place to and many of those mechanisms are picking those students up after it's too late, when they've already started to fall off the wagon. But it seems to me that if you start talking about an AI interface that can work with a student throughout their learning journey, actually you can preempt a lot of that. And it can coach students into better modes of study in a preemptive manner.
And it's happening now.
And it is happening now.
It's happening now all over the world. In the progressive universities all around the world have already begun in a very transparent, user opt-in way to use predictive analytics and a 360-degree view of the student and to do outbound interventions with students to make sure that the university and the technology is there for them to help them through whatever challenge is getting in the way. And a classic of that is student services. We all know, everybody watching this, that well over 70% of the questions that most students ask, either through phone, through an email, if they know what email is anymore, through a chatbot, etc., the technology can answer 24/7,
Yep.
as well as the human, and it's probably more like now 90 to 95%. So without hiring another single person in student services, imagine if you could unlock all of those people armed with the predictive analytics to do outbound interventions for students that needed a little bit of hand-holding, needed a little bit of personalization, needed a little bit of care to belong and be supported, Richard. Just how transformative could that be to their ability to achieve their learning outcomes, and for our ability to step up and give them what we all want, which is fantastic learning and teaching and elegant services architecture, and more importantly, a sense of belonging to an institution that cares about them at a personal level.
Yes, and to be able to personalise learning journeys en masse seems to be a capability that can come with AI.
Yeah.
So Martin, let me jump to a couple of things we're trying out at Curtin University to get your thoughts on that, because like every university now, we're faced with all kinds of options about how we get into this space. There's lots of hot debate. Thankfully, it's a university that's very positive about wanting to take this up and wanting to engage with it. And of course, you get faced with the do we buy into Microsoft and use their system? Do we buy into an LMS like Canvas and then purchase all the add-on AI capability? Do we just go Google and become a Google university, or do we do some combination of that, or actually do we start to build some of our own capability at the same time? So we're in the midst of that journey. I'm going to show you a funny drawing here, because you know my funny drawings. But this will kind of explain one of the things that we're doing. This is Janus. Let me introduce you to Janus. We've Australianised the spelling. Janus is the Roman god of transitions. We're using this because learning as a human activity is a transitional activity. We actually change. We change emotionally, and you and I are enhanced versions of that baby that started learning all those years ago. We're not different people, but we shift and change shape as we learn and take on the world, and we physically change. So neurologists will delight in telling us about the change in neurological structure as we go through. So, and this is important for me about what learning is, because it comes back to your comments on exams being a measure of what you can retain for a short period of time, not really a deep learning experience, and unlikely to have had that actual transformational effect on who you are. So we use Janus as a way of saying this is the space we're in. It's also handy because we want to focus how we think about the technology in that relationship between the learner and the teacher. Right, so and that we should be building AI that operates in that space, not building tools for staff members who teach over here and students who learn things over here, but seeing that as a learning, teaching space. And so one of the positioning things that we've done is to say that when we're talking about learning and teaching, we're not talking about staff who teach and students who learn. We're talking about human beings who learn and teach. Because when you look at the research into human learning, one of the best things you can do is set students up to teach each other discrete components of whatever it is that you're teaching at the time. And how many times, Martin, have you heard this? I've heard it so many. Wow, I had to teach that, and what I learnt teaching that has completely transformed the way I think about it. So let's remember it is that kind of organic space that we're trying to work out what this AI capability helps with in there. So the way that we're configuring this is to look at a series of useful tools. One tool would be, from a staff member perspective, could you help me think about the learning journey for the semester? I've got 12 weeks, 12 two-hour slots. What do I do in each of those 2-hour slots, and how should I arrange that? And one of the key things that we're doing is saying we also want to give these tools access to the best research that we have on human learning. So down here in the roots of this hill, we're building a research data set that is all the evidence base around what human learning looks like, what the learning activities are, so that Janus, when it starts talking with you, starts to say, well, Martin, this is how I'd plan it week by week. If these are the learning outcomes you're trying to get to, the life work learning outcomes that you're trying to get to, this is how I would structure that. And you say, well, look, week 3, here's you're telling me to do this jigsaw puzzle learning activity. I do PowerPoints, I stand, deliver, and I leave the room. Help me understand how to do that. And I think one of the exciting things that can happen here is that AI can also become a way that as a staff member, I can access a lot more material than I could have ever possibly done. I would have had to go to courses for years to discover all the ways that I can think about setting up a learning activity. But with AI capability, I can get something that's tailored to exactly the need I have, where Janus can explain to me, this is how you structure a group learning session on that day. By the way, I'll get all the students organised into groups. Here's a podcast you can give them the week before that introduces the exercise, and so on. You get that interactivity, and you get learning happening with staff as well about becoming a better, more enhanced teacher. And on the student-facing side of that tool, you would get the learning support. So you're going to do the group assignment. Martin, maybe do you want me to find some group members for you? Let me search around the group, see if we can get you. Now let me set up some times when you're all available. I'll work out everybody's availabilities. Let me remind you and set a schedule for how you're going to tackle this assignment. And let me do a review of a draft and give you some pointers to tweak before you submit it. So these are the kinds of two-way facing tools, each with a reciprocal that we're thinking about building, and underpinning that is research led by, so we're going to appoint a fellow in human learning to, on behalf of the university, bring together all the research into human learning that we want to adopt.
Yes.
The feeling is that if we do that, we will build a Curtin DNA about what learning and teaching looks like, because we'll shape it to us. And I think there's an opportunity to seamlessly build some of the compliance stuff into that as well, around TEXA compliance and so on. So we're heading down that path. We're thinking that that giving people the people who are motivated, and it's going to be that small percentage of people who become app developers or something, become agent developers, of also having an opportunity for people to play, sandbox, and try different ideas, so that we can take the best of those and bring them into a simple but effective set of enterprise-wide tools that people can access. So that's one way we're thinking about AI. Keen to hear your thoughts, the dangers of the build your own versus the buy Google. What would any red flags for you there? Things we should have paid attention to?
Look, and I'll give you my honest feedback. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'll give you my view in the world that I'm doing. And I think it's really important that the precious time and money that an institution spends is spent on the things that uniquely add value in their context, Richard. So in Janus's case, I love the fact that at the bottom of in the roots of the model, that you are deliberately and intentionally curating the body of knowledge that you want Janus to use for your staff, because that is the Curtin way. That is your DNA. You've made some conscious decisions about what gets in that knowledge repository and what doesn't. Check, a really good place to spend your time. Trying to develop your own large language model, complete and utter waste of time. So is it trying to wedge yourself to just one. You'll notice already that the discourse for the application of LLMs inside universities within 6 months shifted from every LLM provider trying to lock universities up just to them, to an absolute recognition that they need to play nice with each other and allow universities to have the LLMs coexist, particularly on the learning and teaching side, in the research and innovation side. Institutions sort of in the back office infrastructure are still likely to adopt a single technology like Gemini or Copilot or ChatGPT, but that's more for ease of use than anything else. So I think you're on the right track with Janos. What I would say though is use your precious time and resources to go after the things that uniquely add value for Curtin, and don't try to get in an arms race with others that have the time, the inclination and the focus to do generic workloads that you can just take advantage of. I'm going to grab some of that, I'm going to grab some of that, I'm going to grab some of that, and I'm not going to let anybody lock me in.
Yep.
In the short term, and you touched on it, there is a need for regulatory compliance. So whether we like it or not, there needs to be these databases of record, because that's where regulatory compliance largely comes from. So your opening observation around, do we still need LMSs? Do we still need CRM? Do we still need SISs? The answer is yes, in the short term. But in many ways, what they're becoming is the integrity of the data. How can we go back for, in some cases, decades, to be able to piece the journeys together of students and staff, and marketing activities and all the things that everybody watching this knows we have to meet the regulators' needs. The other thing I'd say though is, all that I've learned is that humans crave structure, particularly students. They love scaffolding. And what I love about Janos is they can automate and personalize a lot of the scaffolding, but I still think, particularly on the LMS side, there's going to be the need to lower the mental load, sort of the cognitive load. There is still going to need to be the place people can go in clear and effective structures where they don't have to relearn what's required of them to move through the syllabus or to move through the semester. So I think I just encourage you with Janos to make sure that you don't say it's either one way or the other, and that you ride along with the transition until the agents have caught up enough where they literally will be dynamically creating a personal LMS for you, a personal LMS for me, and every one of Curtin's other 60,000 plus students, that is still then writing into the record keeping what we need to stay out of harm's way from a regulatory compliance perspective. So there's a few, but I love where you're heading. The only other creative thought that jumped into my mind, which you're probably already thinking, is wouldn't it be fantastic, as all of the staff and students are unleashed with Janos, if there could be down here in your roots again, a part of the knowledge base could be the scholarly outputs coming from your staff and students that are feeding into that. So that what I'm also able to do, which we can't really do today, is leverage every one of my fellow educators' innovation, that coming into me as well, so I can harvest that and learn from that myself. And conversely, students can do the same with peer-to-peer, and staff and students can learn from each other. And then just really quickly, because I know time is short, wouldn't it be fantastic too if we changed our academic staff promotion criteria to reward educators for having made contributions to that scholarly base? How much have they contributed? How much have they reviewed? How much, what evidence can they amass of the way that they have evolved? And, along with what we want from them according to our learning and teaching plan. You can see ways of finally being able to reward people with evidence of their innovation with learning and teaching, which is really hard, as you and I know, because we did that together at RMIT.
100%, yep. And that, of course, is a wonderful creative innovation cycle that we've set up there.
Yeah.
So in summary, one way to think about that is to take the architecture of what we're trying to do from a learning and teaching perspective, and then be pragmatic in terms of making sure that we use LLMs that are right size for right tasks within that model, but don't get locked down into one or the other. And to do the same with LMS and other technologies, and sort of adapt them into the architecture rather than try to build all those bits as well as the basic architecture of the model.
And also from a critical thinking perspective, how can we challenge the LLMs and the conclusions that they're making by using them to challenge some of the conclusions? I think it'd be remiss of us too, Richard, in talking about generative AI if we didn't talk about sustainability in the planet as well, because of the impact that the cost of energy that these systems require. The other thing about being more thoughtful about the type of LLM we use, given the workload that we're using it for, is we can start choosing some more sustainably friendly LLMs for those tasks that don't require the level of processing that, you know, right now is being used for tasks that could just as simply be run on local LLMs on bodies of knowledge like you sketched for Janos, that don't necessarily require the amount of energy, and that obviously is going to have a very detrimental impact on the planet if we're not thoughtful about what we do with that as well.
Great. Well, Martin Bean, thank you so much for that rollicking conversation. It was a rollicking one, as we promised at the start. I enjoyed it very much. So, just final takeaways,
Sure.
bits of advice for universities. What are the three key things that we want to frame in our mind in terms of how we approach the future, given all the bits that we've discussed around relationships with governments, social obligation, the security, ethical, environmental sides of what we're doing, and then all the potential that we see there in terms of personalising learning for a much broader group of us across our communities.
Now, well, firstly, Richard, thank you. It's been a fantastic conversation, and to everybody watching, I hope they get a few nuggets out of this that they can, and even if it just challenges them, they might be a little cranky at some of the things that you and I have said, and that's okay too, provided it's actually getting them to think thoughtfully about the application of generative AI, then I am really happy. So you said three things. I think that the first that I would touch on is just for universities to understand that Pandora's box is open with generative AI. There is no going back. That's not because of the technology, that's because of why humans love using the technology, and it's unstoppable. So trying to resist it, trying to control it, trying to defend against it is a complete and utter waste of our time and effort. What we need to do is to ensure that we intentionally use it the right way, and we help our staff and students understand through AI literacy how to do it the right way, use it the right way, and how to actually help it enrich our lives and the lives of our communities rather than do it damage and harm. That'd be the first. The second would be we have to step up to our responsibility to embrace learners of all ages and types, backgrounds, locations, all the things that we've been talking about. Those universities that are going to sail into very choppy waters are those that are going to be stuck in the tyranny of conventional wisdom, thinking that every student is going to fit into a neat little type of undergraduate student, postgraduate taught student, maybe a little bit of CPD, basically doing what we've always done. It's just not going to work, and those universities are going to have a crisis of both relevance and subsequently revenue very, very quickly. That would be so in other words, beware the tyranny of conventional wisdom, step out of a defensive mindset, move to an adaptive mindset, which is about opportunity thinking, but with an ethical lens. That would be the second thing I would say. And then the third thing that we need to do, in my opinion, is have the courage to rethink what graduateness needs to look like holistically in what we're doing. What do our graduates of all types really need to be equipped with to achieve their ambition for work and their ambition for life? Because it has changed so dramatically, so fast, that if we persist with the ways that we've traditionally done things in all of our learning and teaching, we will fail them. And in failing them, we will undermine the purpose and the need for universities in our economies, societies, and communities. And we just can't let that happen. So off the top of my head, they're my three things for you, Richard.
Fantastic. Martin Bean, thank you very much.
Great
mate.
seeing you, mate. Good to see you.